An abductor was at the hospital with a newborn calling herself mom, while the real mom fought to survive fetal abduction. It has been 10 years and this survivor is ready to speak out about her survival story. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I am Brooke Makenna. I appreciate you being here. In this community, we focus on the victims and the survivors over the killers and the monsters. If that's something you would like to do as well, you can go ahead and join our community. There's also a Genuine Gem newsletter if you want to sign up for that so you never miss an upload. So this was back on March 18th of 2015, and a nurse at the ER at Longmont United Hospital was rushing to save a baby girl born early. This mother had come in with the father and the baby, saying she had the baby at home. No one knew the truth of the situation or what was really happening inside that hospital. At least not yet. But first, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Kitsch, a longtime sponsor on this channel. I adore Kitsch for their inexpensive hair care and hair accessories, and it actually works for your hair. I use it every single time. They are a female-owned global accessory brand at attainable prices. You can even find them at your local Target. They also ship to the US and internationally to over 90 countries. The rice protein shampoo and conditioner bars are so incredible to get that lather and to really deep clean your scalp after a whole week of having buildup and really digging in there and getting all that gunk out to have fresh hair for the next week. I have pretty fine hair, and the protein in these bars helps to reduce breakage and make it stronger all around. They are also free of parabens and sulfates, all the bad stuff that you don't want in your hair care. I've restocked their products so many times that I should basically just use my own discount at this point, but with my discount you can get each bar for around $11. So this set's about $21 and they last for such a long time. So you can just use the link in my description to get 25% off your order, which will auto apply at checkout. Go check it out. Now let's get back to the story. You see, in 2015 in Colorado, 26-year-old Michelle Wilkins was 7 months pregnant with her first child, a daughter named Aurora. She was preparing for her first baby, a complete change of pace in her life. She was excited to be a mom. And then another woman in the area, 34-year-old Dynel Lane, was 9 months pregnant at this time, having a baby boy for the first time. She had 2 teenage daughters, and her friends had just thrown her this baby shower for her baby boy, and she was so ready for her due date that kept being pushed back. Both of these pregnant women were on Craigslist, as many did at this time, essentially going thrifting for secondhand items, especially for their children or even themselves. So one woman was on Craigslist looking for maternity clothes for herself as she was growing, creating this human. And when she came across maternity clothes that were actually for free, she hopped on them. And with Craigslist and later Facebook Marketplace, meetups were considered the norm. You either meet up at a secondary location that was in public, or the buyer and the seller would come to some sort of agreement and meet up at one of their houses. This was very normal. It was most of the time mothers trying to save a little bit of money, so they trusted each other. The whole point was for the sellers to get a little bit of money from items that they didn't use, and the buyers to get cheaper products, both with minimal effort. So this seller on Craigslist suggested that they meet at her home to exchange the money and the clothes. She was also pregnant, so this just worked out for the both of them. So they started texting about these clothes on March 17th, and the buyer decided that she actually maybe didn't need the clothes. But then the seller texted her back, and so while she was out running errands, she decided she would just stop by the house and see what this lady had. The home was in Longmont, Colorado at 1620 Green Place. This was about 40 miles north of Denver. So on March 18th of 2025 at about 1 p.m., they were meeting up to exchange this Craigslist order. But everything would change for her that day. In a horror movie-like scenario that should be called every woman's and every mother's worst nightmare. But this isn't a fictional story. This is real life, real trauma, and real survival. That day, a 911 call would come in from a woman asking for help repeatedly. The dispatcher could see that she was calling from a cell phone at around 2:41 p.m., and this call lasted approximately 6 minutes. The woman was heard struggling to speak, and she told the dispatcher her current address that she was located at. She was hard to understand, but she was trying to say that someone had cut her stomach.
911, address of the emergency. 1620. Please. 1620 what? Green, please. I can't understand the street. Green, please. Green, please. Green like the color? Yeah. Tell me what happened. She cut me. Who cut you? Downstairs. I don't know. Hold on. Wanted to. Hang on. Hold on. Please. I'm downstairs. Okay, who cut you? This girl. I was wanted to cut me like that. Where did she cut you at? I'm pregnant. She got me on my stomach. What is the suspect's name? I don't remember. Are you alone in the house? I don't know. You stay with me. Don't go to sleep. You stay with me. You're downstairs in the basement. Did she break into the house? Does she live there? No, it's her house. It's her house, okay. So you're a renter there and she's the owner of the house? No. They're on their way, okay? Help. Everybody's on their way, okay? Were you having a fight? You were just trying to leave? Downstairs? Yeah, they're here. Okay, I'll let you go.
The dispatcher sent the paramedics to the address, and this woman could not remember her attacker's name. She continued to groan, she was breathing heavily, and she continued to ask for help. Now, a Longmont police officer arrived at the scene to find a woman covered head to toe in blood. The room she was in was covered as well. The woman told the officer that she had been stabbed in the neck as well as cut on her stomach. The officer went to assess the wound on her stomach and saw intestines outside of this woman's body. The woman was also injured to her neck, which was bleeding profusely. In fact, both locations were currently bleeding. The officer asked this woman what happened, and she said that she didn't actually live here. This was for a Craigslist ad. And when they asked her who did this, all she said was the lady of the house. But there was no one else there. Now, this woman was rushed to the Longmont United Hospital for her injuries. She was identified as Michelle Wilkins. These injuries appeared to have been done by a professional, and the incision, like a C-section, was likely performed by someone who had researched or known previously about cesarean births or C-sections. What she didn't know was that she was no longer with her child. However, her child was in the same hospital she was in, just with a different mother. Meanwhile, at the home where this crime scene had been found, officers found a bloody mattress top, a trash bag full of bloody pillows stuffed under a baby's crib, 2 blood-spattered knives, one in the downstairs bedroom where she was attacked, and another in the kitchen sink. This was about a 3-inch blade knife. Meanwhile, different doctors at the same hospital were treating another mother and her baby. The woman had shown up at the ER and told the nurse she delivered this baby at home. She was a bit early. The placenta was still, in fact, attached. So Dr. Brian Nelson, an OBGYN, was rushing over to this ER when he saw a man sitting nearby in the waiting room holding a newborn and sobbing. The doctor was informed that the baby had already been pronounced dead. So he ended up checking on the mother to make sure that she wasn't still bleeding. He said that she kind of had a more blank look on her face while the father was sobbing. The mother was identified as 34-year-old Dynel Lane, and she was taken to the postpartum unit for mothers to get a checkup. She denied a medical examination at first, and something about her the nurses knew was not right. They ended up calling the police, but meanwhile, Dr. Nelson was headed to see another patient at the hospital, a woman who had claimed she had been attacked and was taken to the hospital via ambulance. However, she was being prepped for surgery. She was delirious. She was holding her abdomen, and Dr. Nelson could find that her injuries were very professional. In fact, they were consistent with a first-year intern doing a C-section. But this woman was close to death when she arrived, and so Dr. Nelson really could not speak to her in any capacity. So Dr. Nelson went back to another patient that he was working on, who was that Dynel Lane, who was screaming for the doctors to save her baby at this point. He would perform an ultrasound, pelvic exam, and just an overall examination of Dynel. And the doctors were informed that the police were actually there to question her. You see, the woman who had been rushed to the hospital in the ambulance had been found in this woman's home. They had tracked Dynel to the same hospital with her boyfriend and a baby. Dynel then spoke to the police, and she was stating that this pregnant woman had come to her home earlier that day to buy some clothes, and that she attacked Dynel with a knife for unknown reasons. Then Dynel stated that this woman began stabbing herself in the stomach. Dynel would basically say that she hadn't had this baby, that it was really the fact that this woman she had met on Craigslist started stabbing herself, and Dynel got scared for this baby. And so after she believed this woman was dead, she decided to cut the baby out and get the baby to the hospital right away.
She's like, well, I need to go. I was like, okay. So I turned around, and before I knew it, she had, I think it was a knife that I had opened my box with that had been sitting on the counter. That's, I think, how I cut my hand. But she came at me, and I just kind of reacted, and then we ended up in my daughter's room, and she just kept trying to hit me. And I asked her, I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, stop. And I didn't have my phone with me, so I felt completely, I don't even know after that. And then defending myself, I was grasping at her, and she was grasping at me. And I finally had gotten to the point where I had her down, and I'm like, just stop. And she would just flail and but she wouldn't stop, and it just seemed like every time I would kind of get leverage, she would come at me again. She kept trying to punch me, and she was trying to bite me.
Did she get a punch on you or bite you?
She hit me a couple times on the side, but
glancing.
But it wasn't direct, it was just
a glancing blow.
I think I choked her. She was still trying to hit me, and she was biting at me. I don't even know, it was a struggle. It was a big struggle, and I was trying to maybe get my neighbors to hear me, and I was trying to grab for her phone, but she, I think, had a lock on it. I'm not sure, but I was like, I need to call 911, and I strangled her because she wouldn't stop.
Okay.
Was she saying anything to you?
I don't remember. I don't think so. She wouldn't stop. After she stopped moving, I got scared, and I started thinking about the baby. It wasn't long after that my husband came home.
What were you thinking about with the baby?
I thought I killed her. I was like, I killed this woman. They always tell you not to do things by yourself on Craigslist, but I didn't. It was a pregnant woman. I didn't think anything of it.
What happened once she was unconscious before your husband got home?
It was just a momentary reaction. I was thinking that, I was like, oh my God, I thought I killed her, and I didn't want the baby to die too. I'm not this kind of person. I don't do stuff like this. I didn't know what to do.
We're not judging you, Dynel.
I know. I hate myself. But you in a situation like that, I reacted. I can't even say it. When she stopped moving, I started thinking I didn't want the baby to die too. So I got the knife that she had, and I tried to get the baby out.
It was believed that this was the woman brought in after the attack, Michelle Wilkins, who claimed to be pregnant but was without child, and it was believed that child had been taken from her womb. When Michelle regained consciousness the next morning after her surgery, she immediately knew she was no longer with child. She asked her boyfriend to confirm, and unfortunately, she was told that Aurora was gone. Dynel Lane's test then came back with 0 findings that she had given birth. Her boyfriend, David Ridley, who was with her at the hospital, was devastated. He told police that she told him that she was pregnant in April 2014. He was excited, and she initially told him that her tubes were tied, so this was kind of a miracle baby. Now they were expecting a boy, and Dynel sent him ultrasound images, photos of her growing belly, but would never let him go to the doctors with her. She was gaining weight, they started picking names, and 10 months later she had not given birth. And David told her that he needed answers from a doctor or he was going to leave her. So Dynel told David that she had a prenatal appointment that day, March 18th, and that he could go. So in the evening, he arrived to pick her up, and when he got to that home, he found her covered in blood, saying that she miscarried a baby. He then went upstairs to find a baby in the bathtub, and he rolled the baby over, and he stated he heard the baby take a gasping breath. That's when he rushed both Dynel and the baby to the hospital, and he said he never saw the injured woman in the home. Now that Michelle was conscious and she began remembering things, she would talk to the police and tell them that she entered this residence of Dynel and was taken upstairs to see the clothes that she was giving away for free. They went over the sizes and what Dynel thought that Michelle would fit into. Dynel began putting clothes in plastic bags while the two women talked. They were just talking about, random things, life and family, and Dynel also had a bunny. Michelle loved animals, so Michelle said she picked up the bunny and she was petting it as Dynel was telling her about herself, the fact that she had 2 daughters who were in high school. And she also confided in this Craigslist ad stranger that she was very lonely. She was saying that her boyfriend was working all the time. Her daughters were typical teenagers who didn't want to hang out with her. And so she was kind of expressing this to Michelle, and Michelle, being this very kind-hearted woman, she was listening. But it had become a long conversation, and this was about an hour later. So Michelle began trying to leave by kindly saying that she needed to go and finish her other errands. However, Michelle could tell that Dynel seemed like she really needed someone to talk to, and Michelle stayed.
The first thing she did was take me upstairs and actually just sort through the clothes and decided. We looked at the sizes and thought, she said, oh, these ones might fit you, this might be a little big. And we sorted through the clothes and she put them all in a plastic bag. And several times I told her that I had to go and, I thought she was lonely because she just kept talking over me whenever I brought that up. And I felt like, I was being thoughtful, and listening to her and being kind to her.
And Dynel mentioned that she was 2 weeks overdue in her own pregnancy. Now, Michelle had noted that this woman was very petite, that she didn't look like she was that far along in pregnancy, but Michelle, didn't know many pregnant people, and so she just kind of put that feeling away. After approximately an hour of this, Michelle began inching towards the front door. She didn't feel fearful at this time, but, she needed to get out the door.
I turned and started walking towards the door as we were talking. She said, oh, before I knew I was having boys, some people gave me some girls' clothes. And if you want them, I can give them to you and I can go dig them up. She reached in front of me and she closed the door. And I just felt kind of impatient, but that I would just be polite and go see them, even though I didn't really need any more clothes.
And so Michelle then followed her down the stairs to look at these baby clothes. Now, Michelle did have this intuitive feeling, and she kept hearing that she had everything that she needed, but she wanted to be polite. And so she followed this woman downstairs. As they entered the basement, or the first floor, there was a room with lots of shelving, and Dynel started to look through. It was taking quite a bit of time, but she really did appear as though she was searching through things. Michelle was becoming impatient, though. She had already wanted to leave. She didn't need any more baby clothes, and so she told Dynel she was going to head out, and she headed back up the stairs. However, she was then attacked from behind. Dynel used her hands to strike Michelle, and sweet innocent Michelle did not want to believe that that was actually what was happening. So she turned around and she said, "Did I have a spider on me or something?" And Dynel actually told her that she thought that she got it. However, as Michelle turned back around to head back up, she was struck again. Michelle felt herself being grabbed by her sweater, and she jerked herself around to ask Dynel what she was doing. Dynel then threw her hands up and asked Michelle, "Why would you go into somebody else's house and do that?" Michelle was shocked because she was fighting back to what Dynel was doing. She told Dynel she did not want to hurt her, she just wanted to leave. But Dynel began to shove her towards the bathroom, telling her that she needed to stay there while Dynel called the police. This was escalating, and Michelle had no idea what was going on at this point. She was fighting back. She didn't want to go into this bathroom, but Dynel did end up forcing her into this side bedroom, telling Michelle that she was going to call the police. But Michelle had her phone on her, so she grabbed it, she pulled it out, saying that she could do it herself. And that's when Dynel lunged at her, taking the phone and punching her in the face repeatedly. She was forced onto this bed where Dynel grabbed a nearby pillow and placed it over her face. Michelle was struggling to breathe as she tried to push the pillow off of her. Dynel continued to hit her with her hands and started choking her. She was being attacked, and Michelle repeatedly asked her why, but this didn't stop Dynel.
It's hard to describe exactly what it was. I mean, she hit me, and then it was sort of like, almost like pulling up my sweater, kind of scratching at me. After she struck me, I mean, part of me wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I said, "Did I have a spider or a bug, or, what was it?" And she said, "Oh, I think I got it." And then she did it again, and so I was really confused about what she was trying to do, and started saying, "I don't trust you. You need to wait here while I call the cops." And during this time also, I slipped my cell phone, because I didn't have the purse on me. I slipped it into the bag because I felt like I didn't know where this was going. So she's like grabbing me and trying to shove me towards the bathroom. I'm pushing against her, and we're sort of wrestling, as I'm trying to get back towards the door. So she asked me, she kept threatening to call the cops. And so then I pulled out my cell phone at that moment, and I said, "Well, I'll call the cops then." And she lunged for the phone, and then she started hitting my face repeatedly with her fist and just wrestling me backwards.
She ended up telling Dynel that she loved her in order to possibly get to some empathetic side of Dynel that would get her to stop this. However, Michelle was hit over the head, and then she was stabbed in the neck with the broken part of the bottle.
She stopped using the pillow. I think I knocked it out of her hands, and then she just used her hands, kept hitting me, and tried to choke me. And I just remember this one point where I was just holding my hand over my head, and I just said, "I don't know why you're doing this. I love you." And she said, "If you love me, you'll let me do this." And then she stabbed it into my neck. When she stabbed me, and then she removed it, and then she continued to try to choke me after that.
Michelle remembered that everything was wet after that. She didn't know if it was from blood or from the liquid that was actually in the bottle. This pregnant woman had no idea what was going on. She was being attacked by another pregnant woman, but all of her thoughts were on her not yet born baby and that baby's survival. The woman then straddled her on the bed, pinned down her arms above her head, and began to put all of the weight that she had onto Michelle's windpipe. And that is when everything went black and Michelle passed out.
I remember thinking of Aurora and feeling like I just thought of her, and I felt like I wanted to survive also for her. And so I fought back harder.
Horrifyingly enough, Michelle did wake up, but she was still in that room when she did, and she had no idea what had been done to her, how long had passed, and where this woman was. She was now lying on the floor when she had been on the bed, but there was nobody else in that room. She immediately noticed this awful pain in her stomach, and when she looked down, her pants were pulled down and there was a cut across her belly, a cut like a C-section. But Michelle immediately went into survival mode at that point, not letting herself realize the reality of what that meant, what had happened to her. This was likely her brain's way of protecting her in order to get her to safety.
I just saw this really big cut across my stomach, and I pulled my pants were, high-waisted pregnancy pants, so I pulled them up, and I started looking around the room. Things started coming back about, how she had attacked me, so, I kind of started thinking, maybe she's still in the house. Should I go? I can't outrun her, if I'm in so much pain, I can't outrun her if I go through the front door. And there's a window, putting together an escape plan in my head. Should I climb out the window or make a run for it? Or my feet couldn't support me, so I just fell forward and on top of my hand. And when I did that, I just felt the blood seeping through my pants, and I could feel my intestines outside of my body.
At that moment, Michelle knew that she could either lay there and slowly bleed out and die, or she could try to get up and fight. But she knew it wasn't going to be easy. While in pain, bleeding, with no idea what had happened, she looked up at the bed and she saw her phone. She was able to get up to the phone to call 911 for help, remembering the exact address that she had driven to pick up this Craigslist order. A little while later, Michelle said that she heard the police knock. She was unable to move, but Officer Billy Sawyer walked through the door and Michelle just reached out her hand so he would hold it. She was rushed out of the home into an ambulance and into the hospital, but she was in so much pain, which was being made worse by the nurses and the doctors who were touching her wounds, trying to save her life. And so Michelle did end up asking them for sedation to put her under so she didn't feel it. So all of this time, she had no idea what was happening. She did not know that that baby girl was no longer inside of her stomach or what had happened to baby Aurora. She did not wake up until 7 a.m. the next morning, but her mother's intuition, it told her immediately that Aurora was no longer with them. She was in critical but stable condition after her surgery, and she would spend 5 days in the ICU after losing 40% of her blood. But baby Aurora hadn't survived. Her boyfriend Dan and the father of Aurora was by Michelle's side this whole time to confirm her worst nightmare, and she just kept screaming, "Why?"
When did you first realize that you were no longer pregnant with Aurora?
It was not until the next day in the hospital.
And someone told you what had happened to Aurora? Do you remember?
I think I realized, but I still asked Dan when we were in the hospital, when they pulled all the tubes out.
Dan recalled being confused when he first arrived at the hospital because Michelle had been put under anesthesia and the law enforcement officers were talking to him, but he had no idea what had just occurred. But law enforcement was able to figure this out shortly after, realizing that Dan and Michelle were the real parents of this baby pronounced dead. And Dan was able to hold baby Aurora one last time, as well as Michelle. But the Boulder County Coroner's Office ruled Aurora's death as fetal demise, stating that this baby never took a breath outside of the womb. But if this baby Dynel took to the hospital was not her baby, then what happened to the baby that she was pregnant with? Was she still pregnant? How far along was she? This baby boy? Well, it appeared this baby boy had not existed at all. Or maybe it had years prior, but we'll come back to that. So Dynel Catrice Lane was found to be a 34-year-old licensed nurse aide. That's how she knew exactly what she was doing when cutting into Michelle Wilkins. Dynel Lane admitted that she cut the unborn child out of the womb of a stranger. And by the next day, she was being held on $2 million bond on suspicion of attempted first-degree murder, assault, and child abuse, resulting in death. During this time, the Wilkins family made a statement saying that they were grieving for these senseless victims, but mostly for this precious child whose life ended before she even had the chance to live. But in Colorado, there was no way to actually legally seek these murder charges if it had been established that the fetus hadn't lived outside of the body. And that's what this autopsy was stating. But Dynel could face charges of unlawful termination of pregnancy. On an episode of Dr. Phil, Michelle would actually go on this show to speak out about her survival and baby Aurora and the justice she was seeking for her. Now, Dr. Phil would ask Michelle if she believed the woman had killed her child. Not in terms of politics or the law, but just her opinion. Michelle ended up answering that no matter her intention, any answer would be made political, but she said if not for that attack, Aurora would still be alive today. Michelle was said to have compassion and forgiveness for Dynel, but that she does want her to be in jail so this doesn't happen to another woman. So as they went into the trial, knowing that they could not file these charges of murder against Dynel because this baby allegedly never lived, there was uproar over that fact politically. Also, just because of the fact that Dynel's boyfriend had claimed that he heard the baby gasp for breath. Dynel was held at the Boulder County Jail until her trial in February of 2016. She pleaded not guilty by reason of self-defense, saying that she just won the fight. She said she thought Michelle was dead, so she removed the unborn baby. Prosecutors' opening statements focused on Dynel and her relationship with David being on the rocks. They showed texts from David stating that he was about to kick out Dynel and her daughters, and when he was asked about her pregnancy, he said that she was lying to him about when the baby was going to be there. When asked if he thought that she was trying to hide something, he said yes, he just wished she would tell him what it was. Now, this was David's first child, so he likely did not see any of the signs that Dynel actually was not progressing in her pregnancy and did not have the typical pregnancy symptoms. But Dynel was desperate, and the prosecution said she had come up with a solution for this. But that involved a Craigslist stranger. 9 nurses who had treated Dynel over the years would testify about Dynel's disposition towards lying about pregnancy. A nurse named Mary stated that even back in January, 2 months prior to the attack, Dynel had come into the ER complaining of being lightheaded, but she denied being pregnant. She said she was arguing with her fiance and she felt lightheaded, but she ended up leaving without even seeing a doctor. A Longmont police detective, Sarah Pierce, testified that Dynel had a conversation back in January about having already given birth to that baby boy, as well as another conversation where she said that her pregnancy was just overdue. Her search history included information of the female anatomy 2 days prior to the attack, and she also allegedly tried to delete the messages between herself and Michelle the day of the attack. Her interview with detectives was played, where she explained that Michelle came after her instead. Now, this story appeared to be the complete opposite of what the truth in the medical tests had provided.
Before I took the baby upstairs, I did try and give her mouth to mouth.
The baby? So she wasn't crying when you removed her?
When I went back downstairs to find my phone, the girl was moaning and she was crying. No, she wasn't crying. She was just making breathing sounds. And I got scared.
This is a lady in the basement.
Okay, where'd you put the baby when you took the baby upstairs?
In the bathtub. It was empty. I just sat her in there. I know I should have said something then, but I didn't. I just got scared. I just left her there.
Okay, and when your husband came in, what happened?
The baby was in the bathtub.
Whose baby did he think it was?
Ours.
Did he think you had been pregnant?
I wanted to tell him so bad. I was pregnant. Last year. But it was his first baby. And I never thought I could have another one after I lost my son. And I didn't tell him that I lost a baby.
It sounded like she thought she was the survivor here. Michelle herself would then take the stand, and she tearfully told the court of her survivor story. Attorney Stan Garrett said that it took everything, every bit of emotional and physical energy for her to get in that courtroom and testify in front of her attacker.
Would it be fair to say that a part of your personality is that you're a talkative person?
Yeah.
Okay. And what? I'm sorry.
I said, yeah, I would consider myself extrovert.
Okay. And so that's how this conversation probably kept going as well, too, as you engaging in it.
Yeah, there were definitely two of us talking.
And it's at some point while you're downstairs that things change.
Yeah.
There's a clear difference between the conversation you're having upstairs to that point.
Yes.
And that happens when you feel this kind of slap or hit on you. You realize the woman you're with isn't in the same reality as you.
Yeah.
But Dynel's mother and sister testified that she was a loving and compassionate person who would never commit such an attack. However, they did speak about how she did in fact have her tubes tied after experiencing the loss of her son. She had lost her 19-month-old son, Michael Alexander Cruz, back in 2002 in a drowning incident, and was said to be obsessed with pregnancy after that. The defense rested without presenting any witnesses. Psychiatric evaluation was not given to Dynel Lane to help determine motive at all, but the defense requested concurrent sentences instead of consecutive ones, saying that with her cooperation in the case and in prison, she was showing that she could be rehabilitated.
I choose to use my time to address you directly, Dynel, because up to this very moment you have refused to acknowledge us, the victims of your violent actions. I am a compassionate person. This is the foundation of the beliefs from which all others grow. It is clear that you need healing, and it is my sincere belief that you get it. However, there were atrocities committed against me and my daughter that sent a ripple of pain out to so many others, and they must be addressed. Those committed against Aurora's father and all of her grandparents, against law enforcement and first responders who cannot unsee the trauma that you created, and against your partner and daughters who surely have guilt, shame, and trauma of their own to wrestle with for the rest of their lives because of you. I did not learn until the trial just how many opportunities you had to do the right thing and then chose not to. You knowingly left me to die multiple times. The only tears that you shed during the trial were those of self-pity to the sound of your own voice as your lies were slowly revealed. And yet, even now, you cannot come clean about what actually occurred. You embrace your narcissistic fantasy to fulfill the lie you created, and it was more important than my right to live and Aurora's right to live. This is a picture of her.
No, I'm going to object at this point. Thank you. Ms. Lane, please direct your comments to me.
I trust the judge to make a wise decision on what you believe to be fair, but I believe that you should receive the maximum penalty because I believe you've lost your privilege to live in our society, not only because of your actions during the attack, but also your actions since the attack. Your inability to acknowledge the immense cruelty and evil you committed only proves you are not fit to walk free amongst us ever again.
Your Honor, objection at this point. This is inappropriate.
Wait a minute, what's in it?
May we approach, Your Honor? Everybody sit down. Ms. Wilkins, is there anything else you want me to know?
That is all.
Thank you. The point is moot.
Now, Judge Maria Birkenkotter stated that with the brutality of the attack, it justified sentencing Dynel to the maximum penalties. Dynel actually denied the chance to speak, and she expressed no remorse. However, her mother and father apologized to Michelle in court. The prosecution's closing statements argued that the linchpin was that Dynel needed a baby, and Michelle had one. The defense argued that what Dynel did was hasty, impulsive, and reckless, but not deliberate, and she didn't intend to kill Michelle. But Dynel Lane was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree assault, second-degree assault, attempted murder, and unlawful termination of a pregnancy. She was sentenced to 100 years, and she began sobbing. After her sentencing, Michelle told reporters that the judge was listening to everything that they said, and she felt that justice had been served for baby Aurora. Now, after the attack and trial in Boulder, Colorado, Michelle decided to move away to North Carolina for a fresh start. She started going by her nickname Ellie. Ellie was struggling with healing. She felt like her past relationships weren't strong enough to withstand the serious amount of trauma and grief that she was enduring after losing her child, and so traumatically. However, by 2020, she decided that maybe the place of her trauma was exactly what she needed to face. So she went ahead and moved back to Boulder, Colorado. This is the same time that Dynel had been appealing, and this was actually denied. But Ellie said that it never really mattered whether she was in or out of prison when it came to her recovery. Ellie said, "It would be easy to say that Dynel is a perpetrator and I'm a victim, period. But I think it's a little more complex than that. People are obviously not one-dimensional, even if they are perpetrators of acute violence or have been victims of acute violence. Grief for my daughter will never go away. But there are some times when it hurts less, when it has less of an ability to collapse me. I collapsed less under the grief than I did 4 or 5 years ago." Ellie has volunteered with nonprofits like the Colorado First Response Coalition, supporting emergency responders like the officers who arrived at that home that day to save her. She's gone back to school for clinical mental health to become a therapist because that has helped her so much. She feels like therapy is a calling for her. She said, "There's this tendency in general to see victims as one-dimensional. Some part of me wants to demonstrate what healing can look like, that being a victim is not the perpetual suffering." Now, what she wasn't ready to talk about right after this occurred on Dr. Phil is something that she is more open to today. And she has spoken about becoming a mom again after years of not feeling ready. She says she is so much softer now. She used to have this idea that strength and resilience were about being tough. But after this and her healing, it has opened her up to this much softer side of receiving help. She now has a boyfriend that she loves, and she is looking forward to creating a family. Always keeping in mind baby Aurora, her baby in the sky. I think it's so beautiful that this woman with such a sweet, kind soul wants to spread compassion and empathy, even for perpetrators. The fact that she can do that just shows what kind of heart that she has. I think it'll be a full, healing circle for if she does end up having children and getting to raise those beautiful kids and getting them to tell them eventually about their sister Aurora. A lot of people who hear this case are very concerned about the lack of murder charges. The fact that regardless of politics on this matter, there were multiple times where people claimed that this baby was in fact living outside of the womb prior to passing away. Do you think that Dynel Lane should have gotten murder charges? Ellie did not know that she was no longer with the child for so long. I think she did know. I think mothers know that mother's intuition, it's a superpower. But her brain wanted to protect her so much that her brain did not allow her to realize she was without child until she was stable and in recovery in that hospital. But I can't imagine once that veil disappeared and she did have to face reality, that kind of pain that must have overwhelmed her. I'm sending all of the love. No woman should ever have to go through this. To rip a baby out of the womb of another woman because you're in pain, it's evil behavior. She is working on a book, and that's going to come out hopefully soon. And so I will definitely let you guys know when that comes out and to go and support it, because she didn't want to make this a book of just trauma. She said she wanted to wait until she had healed so it can be a book about healing instead. What a beautiful woman inside and out. And I am glad that she feels in her soul that justice was given for baby Aurora, because at the end of the day, that is what matters most. So rest in peace, baby Aurora. And I'm sending all of my love to Ellie. If you are watching this and you feel pulled to do so, please leave some kind words down below for Aurora or Ellie. If you are not aware, or if you are new to this channel, I do a ton of survivor stories. I am very passionate about that. I have a playlist that I will link down below if you would like to go and watch a whole bunch of them, get inspired, and learn what humans are really capable of surviving, and that evil cannot win. and we can't let it. You know, it's interesting because I had started researching this case and I came across a pretty recent one of a girl who faked her pregnancy for 9 months, where the father, her family, everybody believed it was real, and then she faked her labor and she ended up using a reborn doll, which is one of those super expensive, realistic looking dolls. I got one when I was a child, that she pretended to be her actual child before then pretending that child died. Let me look up her name real quick. Yes, her name is Kira Cousins. She had a very elaborate story and lie for a baby who never existed, a baby she called Bonnie Lee. It is very sad the type of delusions and mental health issues that these women have to be experiencing, whether that was possibly a loss of a child beforehand or possibly the kind of attention-seeking, Munchausen by proxy related things that cause them to fake these scenarios. At the end of the day, the truth is going to be even more heartbreaking the more lies that you add. And not just heartbreaking for those around you, for you as well when you have to face that reality. Thank you so much for listening. Do not forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay. Bye.